Cinderella Tales and Their Significance by Kristen Friedman, University at Albany, State University of New York. Variations of Cinderella tales make use of the device of changes in standing and status to suit different purposes, ranging from criticism, teaching, preservation of culture, and many other aims. Cinderella tales are cyclical tales in which heroines are introduced as living in a middle to upper class with a loving father proper to their character, birth, and other traits, but which they leave or are forced out of. The heroines must prove themselves and engage in work or adventure to find their way back into the class and environment in which they belong. These tales generally reward the good, clever, and fair, and punish the wicked, while revealing significant ideas about the gender and class relations prevalent within the societies and time periods the tales come from. These tales have become staples in not only Western but global culture, with traditional tales being preserved and repeated, while new variations and renditions of the tales are continuously produced and spread. Cinderella tales are one of the most popular types of fairy tales known today. The popularity of Cinderella tales is not new, but rather has existed for centuries. Cinderella tales are found throughout many different regions of the world, as well as in different time periods. The passing on of Cinderella tales has served many different purposes for different people throughout time. Storytellers, writers, and collectors have used the tale as a social criticism, as a tool to teach lessons or morals, as a tale to entertain, in which audiences create sympathetic bonds with characters, as a method of preserving culture, as a medium to express intellect, and for many other purposes and devices. Studying the history of the tale, as well as the differences between versions of the tales as they are connected to different authors and time periods, allows for trends and themes dealing with gender and class relations, as well as other important issues to come to light. The origin of fairy tales and folk tales is a much debated and discussed topic, with differences for each explained in many scholarly works. Zepes states, "There are numerous theories about the origins of the fairy tale, but none have provided conclusive proof about the original development of the literary fairy tale. This is because it is next to impossible to pinpoint such proof. Scholars emphasize different periods and developments as being the most important to the development of the literary fairy tale, ranging from the popularity of telling tales in the court of Meme Delaunay to the invention of the printing press to the collection and publication of many tales by the Brothers Grimm. In fact, all of these factors are important to the history of literary fairy tales," Zepes posits. In fact, literary fairy tale has evolved from the stories of the oral tradition piece by piece in the different cultures of the people who cross-fertilized the oral tales and disseminated them. When examining fairy tales, one must take into account the rich tradition behind each tale, as well as its relation to the many other, probably existent, slightly different versions of the same tale. Fairy tales are often considered to be magic tales, a specific type of folk tale rather than as their own genre, apart from folk tales, even though not all fairy tales directly involve magic. This school of thought explains folk tales as being collective and having been maintained through oral tradition, with the introduction of the printing press allowing printed tales to further strengthen the tales. That literary fairy tales gained their strength and popularity as a sort of salon game for aristocratic French women, and the tales were intended for adults rather than children, who appear to be the modern audience who, who appear to be the audience modern Western societies associate with fairy tales. Seifert confirms adults being the prevalent audience with, in fact, literary fairy tales were intended for adult readers in the 17th and 18th centuries. More significant, their classification as children's literature is at least in part a mimetic transposition of content onto intended readership, since they depict, by and large, the conflicts of childhood or adolescence and its resolution into adulthood. As such, fairy tales specify with extraordinary precision and economy a culture's prototypical quest for identity. They are par excellence narratives of initiation, becoming, and maturity. They are themselves susceptible to becoming and have become powerful instruments of socialization and acculturation. The way in which the major audience for fairy tales has shifted in age is interesting to note when examining changes in fairy tales over time. An example of which would be how many fairy tales were edited to be more suitable for children in later times, as they were viewed as too graphically violent and traumatizing for youngsters to hear. Modern audiences' association of children and fairy tales have been strengthened as a result of movies such as Walt Disney's Cinderella. Children's editions of such books are now also a much more commonplace find than adult versions, most likely due to the themes within Seyffert's explanation of the tale's association with acculturation, teaching, and socialization. A popular sort of fairy tale that has been popular throughout several continents and vast time periods of history has been that of the Cinderella sort of story, which can even be found in Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and Chinese mythologies. The tale has not traditionally been found in Australia, Africa, or the Americas, but has since spread to these regions. The story typically deals with a daughter who is mistreated by her stepmother and her stepsisters, and must then prove herself as the rightful bride of royalty through passing the slipper or shoe test, following her losing one after ensnaring a prince or other royal figure with her charms. William R. S. Ralston describes the tale particularly well with, that is to say, she is reduced to a state of degradation and squalor, and is forced to occupy a servile position, frequently connected in some way with the hearth and its ashes. From this, however, she emerges on a certain festive occasions as a temporary brilliant being, always returning to her obscure position until at last she is recognized, after which she remains permanently brilliant, her apparently destined period of eclipse having been brought to a close by her recognition, which is accomplished by the aid of her lost shoe or slipper. This tale is a particularly attractive one to audiences and has been tailored to suit even Americans. Though it is amusing, this tale is so attractive to Americans. Americans have idealized stories such as those of Horatio Alger and the self-made man, making it ironic that Cinderella stories have gained such popularity, as Cinderella deals with a noble, middle class, or upper class female who has lost her riches and must reclaim her proper standing in the world. Jane Yolen states, "Yet how ironic that this formula should be the terms on which Cinderella is acceptable to most Americans. Cinderella is not a story of rags to riches, but rather riches recovered. Not poor girl into princess, but rather rich girl or princess rescued from improper or wicked enslavement. Not suffering Griselda enduring, but shrewd and practical girl persevering and winning a share of the power. She also explains that Cinderella first came to America in the nursery tale the settlers remembered from their own homes and told their children. This demonstrates the way in which Cinderella made its way to America. She also seems to despair at the way Cinderella tale has changed in recent times. She writes, "Hardy, helpful, inventive. That was the Cinderella of the old tales, but not of the mass market in the 19th century. Today's mass market books are worse. For the sake of happy ever after, the mass market books have brought forward a good, malleable, forgiving little girl and put her in Cinderella's slippers. However, in most of the Cinderella tales, there is no forgiveness in the heroine's heart, no mercy, just justice. Missing too from the mass market books is the shrewd, even witty Cinderella. Even Perrault's heroine bantered with her stepsisters, asking them leading questions about the ball while secretly and deliciously knowing the answers."